Well, hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets and we do it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time we ask ourselves what happened today and what does it tell us about the coming ones. I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time and archived on YouTube under the channel L.A. Little. Starting Sunday, tonight actually is going to be the last live show. They're all going to be tape delayed, at least for the foreseeable future. What that means to you, of course, is a little bit different time in terms of the schedule. I won't be coming on at 9. The programs will air at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. If you want me to answer questions, and I do encourage it, send me what you're trying to do. You can send it to 2 places. Those 2 places the same as always, 303-912-9110 or support@ta-today.com. Both of those places I can pick them up, and actually I think that I'll be able to do a little better job as a result of you getting those to me ahead of time. I can give a little focus to them and try to answer your questions better. Also, we'll be splitting up the show a little bit more, trying to do a shorter summary at the beginning of the show, and all of this requires a little bit of preparation on my part. And hopefully we make it nice and crisp and more useful for you. So I hope it works out. You know, as always, we're trying to do what's best. And if it doesn't work, well, we'll massage it a little bit. But that's the show, that's the idea, that's what we're trying to do. So let's get started with tonight. You know, what happened today. Pretty much what we've seen, and that is that they do not want to give up this range. Pretty much flat, right? Other than the Russell, and the Russell now has been the weakest. Russell pops back up, kind of killing that ABCD bearish formation that was in place. What do we see here? Nothing but red on the commodity screen again. This has been the case for what, 3 weeks now? 4 weeks? Just almost every day. They slice and dice them every day. Dollar up again, which has also been the case. And I've been thinking quite a bit about, you know, I've talked about, and I'm going to pop over to this real quick. I've been talking about or thinking about the interest rates. I can't find a reason. I've been thinking a lot about what's happening in terms of the sell-offs that we're seeing in the OX markets. What I'm talking about is TLT, all the, you know, any kind of a bond, right? Also, emerging markets are getting hit. Let's pop in here and just look at some of these OX markets first. Here's the emerging markets. Did do a little doji today. Volume a little bit heavier though, so I don't know if it's going to flip around or not. But if you just kind of glance down at the list, and let's look at like a 7-year bond, and right across the curve, 3 to 7 year bonds. You know, I can even go to the 1 to 3 year bond. That one even sold off quite a bit from the top. Of course, we go to the 20-year bond, also selling down again today. You know, right across the board, all these interest rates, and then if we go over to municipals, even the high-quality corporates and the junk bonds, all these are selling down. What's happening, right? And I've been wondering about this, thinking about this, and the only thing that seems to make sense is the expectation that interest rates are going to go up sooner than we think. I can't make any more sense of it than that, and I guess why I've been missing that is this market doesn't care, right? It is almost like the stock market is like, okay, interest rates are going up, that's good. I mean, we've reached the level of insanity that higher rates are good now. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they throw at this market. Everything's good, right? Bad news is good news is good news, any news is good news. And so I can't make any other, you know, at least so far, I haven't come up with a reason for it. I just wanted to throw that out there at the top of the show because something's happening there. And, you know, if you go to the commodities, that's also what's happening in the commodities. Here's the gold market, you know, another little hammer, but couldn't even get back inside the range, you know, inside yesterday's close. It's an ugly picture out here. Anything other than equities the last week has been tough. And so all I can surmise is they're starting to price in higher rates. I can't come up with anything else. So that's that. Let's go back over to the equities themselves. Look at these magical beasts that will not fall. It's a range trade. It's been a range trade. You know, the range just got expanded. Let me pop this up here like that. You know, that's the range now. And what does it mean if it breaks? Well, if it breaks, it's equidistant either way. What's the trend? The trend is up. Which way is it likely to break? Well, it's likely to break up because of the way the trend is set up. So, you know, you've got a bullish trend across all time frames, so you can only think of it in those terms. Whether it will do it or not do it, we'll have to see, but that's what you have to think, right, in terms of the way this thing's set up. I don't see anything special here. I was just looking to see if there's anything here. I don't see anything. Here's the S&Ps. And this morning they opened down, right, immediately went down farther, and then flipped around like usual and came right back up. Again, just a range trade. It tested into the highs. Nobody wanted to give it up in terms of price. So it just goes back the other way. NASDAQ, also range trade. NDX. Now this one I was looking at right before I got on. This one actually, and I don't talk about classical all that much, but a lot of folks will look at this and say, wow, this sure looks like a diamond pattern, doesn't it? And diamond patterns are typically reversals. And, you know, I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch, but it is kind of a diamond pattern starting to take place here in the NDX. We'll see how that one plays out. You know, again, I don't pay that much attention to those anymore. You know, all I see here is a large range, 15 days now, 3, 6, 9, 12, 13 days. And when it breaks, you know, it's going to go about equidistant whichever direction it breaks. And so if you pull it on the NDX and you do it both ways here, you can see that. If it breaks to the downside, of course, it's going to be a retest regen off that swing point high. I got a question emailed to me, and we'll tackle that one here in a bit with respect to the NDX. Russell. The Russell was the one yesterday that kind of made us think, okay, this may just continue on down tomorrow anyway. Not to be. Back the other way. It's going to wipe out the B point here. This one looks like it's gonna not. Even though it was confirmed bearish, ABCD, it's not going to do it. And when I see a pattern, and you know, one pattern breakage, you know, doesn't kill it, but when I see something like this where, you know, just like the other day, we should have got follow through the downside and we didn't. When I see something like this that should follow through because it had already broken, but it doesn't, what does that tell me? Well, it tells me this market is stronger than we think it is, right? And if it's stronger than we think it is, then we better be in tune with it because that's what it's trying to do. So you know, this one, it's not quite dead yet, but it's, you know, it looks like it's about to kill off the bearish ABCD structure, and that would say, hey, the market's stronger than we think. So that's, let me see, that's the indexes. I popped over and looked at the world indexes, and I just kind of mentioned it a second ago with the EEM, and that is that you're seeing these markets come down. I mean, they have been going up for quite a while, even longer than us, right? Or no, well, not longer than us, but they've certainly been going up along with us. I think to say anything else would be, you know, misrepresenting the facts. Here's the, you know, the weekly is nice, big, you know, stretch to the top side, any way you look at it. And so a nice big stretch up, you know, it's not quite as dramatic as ours, but going higher. But now, you know, on the daily, it's struggling. And, you know, I know the all ordinaries, a lot of it's dependent on China. And if we pop over and we look at China, we can see there that they are definitely struggling. They're back into this bar, tested into it last night. So the low there was, this is the 8 shares in Shanghai, 109.8450. Got underneath it, back over. It doesn't have the volume. This thing should bounce tonight. If I look at the Hong Kong shares themselves, they traded lower again as well. A kind of a doji here. Looks like it's gonna hold. It's been trying to hold this swing point high. It looks like it will hold it. Let me see. That low was 24,660. Yeah, closed just over it. So It does look like it's going to hold and bounce, but you know, these markets, these are struggling right now, and they were the strongest things out there for a while. The rest of Asia, Nikkei still strong, nothing different there. This thing pops over the top. If I look at Taipei, Taipei's still weak. I believe Korea came back last night, yeah, and they traded down again too. So I don't see that much. If I go over to Europe, you know, Europe opposite now. Europe doesn't want to give it up. You know, or you couldn't buy European shares before. Now you can't give them. You know, now you couldn't give them away. Now you can't buy them. This one wants to go back up, touch the top. And I look at the DAX. DAX looks about the same, and the FTSE also tested lower. And you know, they've got the elections coming up. It's going to keep this thing going sideways, but tested lower, had more volume. It come down and tested again. And the other one, Brazil. Brazil, you know, this one's going lower. I don't see how it's going to stay up here. It did test into this. It did bounce off of it, but it reversed today with no volume. It's going to come right back into this bar and test it again off the July 18th high. So European markets probably the strongest outside U.S. right now. Sector-wise, other than XLE, most things pretty strong. We had a little pullback this morning, and then they bought it again. So, prognosis for tomorrow, I don't think you're going to see any change. I don't think you'll see a change tomorrow. I don't think you'll. Now, all you do have a couple numbers tomorrow, so that could change something. There's a sentiment in the retail sales. But outside of that, you know, those are not huge numbers probably, and you know, unless they're way off. And so this market's probably going to go sideways again, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it go sideways again Monday and Tuesday in front of the Fed meeting and be still hanging up here at these highs by the time the Fed does whatever the Fed's going to do. So that's kind of the synopsis of where we're at. I got a bunch of questions, so I'm going to flip to those, and whatever time I have left, I'll come back to a couple thoughts of my own. So let me pop in here and take these questions. Tonight's the last night you can use the chat window if you want, and you can pop some questions in there if you care to. So let's get over here and see what we got. So the first one comes from a member of mine of TA Today, and she asked about the oil stocks, and she's saying that, you know, I'm looking at the OIH. Right, and the OIH is extremely weak. So if I pop up the OIH, you can see it's been very weak. It did break down, left volume at the bottom, got a nice spike today, coming back up in the swing point low, going to do a retest regen off those lows, the breaks. So all looking weak. She says, I've been looking, you know, she uses the site a lot. She's been looking at this sector and doing some analysis, trying to find some stocks to short. So she's picked 3 and she wants my opinion, so let's pop through them. And a couple of these I think I looked at last night. I know this one I did. This is EOG Resources. I looked at it last night. It had a hammer reversal last night. I said it would probably bounce today. That is what it did. It got some decent volume on the way back up. I suspect some of that is short covering, but you never know until you see the next bar. My point last night is it's going to have, you know, it's going to have some serious resistance right in this area. This is going to be a tough spot to get over, and so it's almost into it already. This is going to be the spot to look at now. So does that make it a short? Well, the volume today makes me want to definitely see what happens tomorrow before I do anything. If I go over and look at it on the weekly, that high from the May 5th week, the 106.50 area, that is the serious resistance here. That's also the bottom of the breakdown bar off the top. So that's, what is that low? 107.16 back to 106.50. So if it traded back over 107.16, I would think the short ideal is not a good one. And I'm popping back over here to see what that looks like. And that's the top of this bar. So when I look at that and I look back over here, because you have to line it up on multiple time frames. So when I look back over here using that 107.16, I can see the intersection here. I can see this bar here. So now I'm thinking, okay, my stop should be right up here somewhere, right over the top of this area. Whatever the ATR is, and I don't know what the number is. We could look it up, but you know, you can go over on the cube and find the ATR. Take a quarter, 25% of the ATR, add it to whatever your, you know, add it to whatever this high is, and we get the number here. That top is 108.51. So just assume the ATR is probably 60-70 cents at least. Maybe just call it a buck. Add 25 cents to 108.51, gets you about 108.76. That's where I put the stop. 108.76 should not get back up there. Okay, that, you know, it definitely is stronger than you think if it gets back up there. So now you have the stop. Now you can think about where can you put this, right? Trade on. And if you go back to the weekly, you're asking yourself, where can it go? I think it can go to the bottom of this bar. So your target's 96. You know where your stop is. Now you just got to figure out how to make the trade work. So that's how you have to do them, right? So that you can make the numbers make sense for you. Because if you don't make the numbers make sense, you're just flying blind. And I know this trader is good, and I know she knows what she's doing, and she knows what I'm talking about. That's how I would set it up. Let's look at the other two real quick for you while we're here. TPLM is another one, and this is Triangle Petroleum. And let me see. So Triangle Petroleum. Okay, so they had a nice big spike down in volume. Let me see what the weekly looks like. Well, yeah, the weekly actually looks pretty strong still. So the weekly is not that appetizing. Let me go back to the daily. I think what you're looking at here is you were looking at this bar, right? This bar and thinking, okay, it's starting to show some serious weakness. And it may be. I mean, that may be what it's telling you. But look how, you know, it didn't do a takeaway bar, which is a one bar reversal back the other way, but it's definitely coming right back up there to test it again. So what I would be interested in is, what does it do when it gets here? You know, does it die here or not? Now, if it does, yeah, then you can put a tight stop right over it. I would put the stop about up here somewhere, so it's not quite as tight. What is that, 12? So about 1240, 1250 or something. And so you risk that much. What's your target? At least this bottom is your target now, so you can certainly make the trade work, right? So I can see the numbers working here. I don't like this one quite as good as the other one, but yeah, I could see the trade working in terms of numbers. And then let's look at the last one. That was BCEI. Let's pop in here and see what she looks like. So this is Bonanza Creek, and this one I would not even short. And the reason for it is I see two nice big up bars here, right? When I see big strong up bars, that tells me somebody's putting money in here, and it's not me and you. Somebody who's got more money than we do. And you know, when I see that kind of action, that tells me that A, it's probably going to come back up here and test this area, and B, it's not a weak stock yet. I mean, it hasn't broken yet. Let me look at the weekly. Yeah, and the weekly looks the same. Look at the nice strength here on this stock. This is not one I would short. Okay, that's not the kind of short setup you need. So I wouldn't even think about this one. This one doesn't look like a short. Okay, that's those. Let's move to the next one. Next question was texted to me. Let me pop in here and grab that. I try to take them in the order that you give them to me. If I start getting too many, I'll give preference to members probably. But so far I've been able to answer them all. I think there was only one night you had so many I couldn't get to them. So this one is asking me about VXX again. So we've seen the VXX before. We talked about it, I don't know, 2 or 3 days ago. The question was, was it a place to get long? At the time, I was like, I don't know, it could maybe get to the swing point high, I think is what I said. But from the analysis I just gave you, and also what you're writing here in the text, I think you're right. I think this is going to come back at you again, and I probably would exit. I wouldn't stay long the VXX. Looks like the stocks are going to go to the top of the range, try to test the top, or at least hang up here. And if they're hanging up here, and the volatility stays low, this thing's going to drop. So the VXX, of course, is the VIX futures ETN, and yeah, it looks like it's going to come back down. I'd wait for it to come back down and maybe back into this big bar and try it again. So that's the VIX. The other question was, we went long the GDX for a bounce play. Let's take a look at the GDX. So the GDX, well, you got the reversal today. So, and you got it on lighter volume. Yeah, I think you hit it right. I don't know what price point you got it, but yeah, I think you hit it right, and I think you probably got a decent chance. Now, you know, Fridays, anything can happen in the gold market. It seems to have big days one way or the other on Fridays, and maybe you'll get the big day on the way up. But this gap area, which is also these heavy bars, that would be my target. I'd put my stop really tight. I wouldn't give it any room, right, tomorrow, and make it go up. If it doesn't go up, just get out. But yeah, I think you got a shot at a decent trade here, just looking at the daily, and that's what you're doing. Let me quickly take a peek at the weekly, and the weekly never even tested that low yet. Gold is already tested. Gold is down here testing this area, and this is one of the reasons I keep thinking gold is going to hold, because the stocks are not giving it up, right? The low here, 2368, and we got to 77. Didn't test, got close, doesn't have the volume. Yeah, I think it's going to bounce. And if you do end up staying a little bit longer, that's the range, right? Here's your breakdown, equidistant, right? That's something I talk about all the time. So what's your target? Right back up to test to see if you can get back in a higher range. So that's where you'd be looking. And if I look at that price point, let me grab one of these. That low is 25.43. So let's take that low, go back over to our daily now. 25.43 is up into this top of this resistance zone. So that you may get as much as that, but I'd be looking right here. Okay, last one, let's go to it. This one was a question about the NDX. And so I was talking about, there was a question here. So let me pop this up. This is a little bit, not long-winded, but it's a good question from a member, and he's asking, with the NDX not having done a retest regen yet. So what he's talking about, for those of you who are new or don't remember, or God forbid haven't been paying attention, the retest regen is where you have a swing point high that's broken, and we see it broken here, and you haven't come back to test into it, right? 95% of these always come back. 80% of them come back within 6 bars. This one, nada, right? What do we got? 20, 25 bars already. It hasn't come back. So when it comes back, it's a high probability play. So the question is, share my insights on the percent probabilities and the risk reward of, number one, trading it short to do a retest regen in the near future. Nada. You don't want to do that. You trade something short not for that reason. You trade it short because there's a failure somewhere, right? You get an over-under, or so let's say you go up here and you test this top again and you fail with lighter volume. Okay, then you can trade it short, but not because you expect it to come here. You think it can get to the bottom of the range, and if it breaks it, it can come back in and finally do the retest regen. But you short it because you have a short setup. You don't short it based on the ideal that it will come back in, because this thing could just, you know, hang up here for a very long time. I've seen them go 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 bars before they come back. So you cannot do that. That's not a valid trade. The next part of it, and I'm glad you asked because I don't think I've ever covered that. Second one is playing it long to continue without a pullback. I don't do that either. What I would do is I would look again for the setup. What's the setup? The setup is a break of this range, which should give you an equidistant move off of it. And because this market is bullish, that's a good probability trade if it breaks out above here, right? If it gets above it, that's a good probability trade to get up to this area. So I don't trade it based off the idea that it's not going to come back here, because it hasn't yet. I trade it off of some sort of a setup that it gives me. So again, I don't use the retest regen to give me that kind of formula, right? That idea. And then the third part of the question was playing it long until it looks like it may start to break towards the retest regen zone. Yes, you could do that. In other words, the range trade. Okay, and now what is a range trade? I've talked about these before. This one isn't the classical one that I talk about in the books. This is just an old normal range trade. The classical one is where you get some sort of a huge, like let's say that this thing came up and this volume here was a volume spike like this, and this bar was this big, right? That sort of a range trade is a nice setup, because more than likely it's going to trade for a long time inside this bar, right? And because it had huge volume, wide price spread on the same bar, that usually after an extended move, and this wasn't that extended but somewhat extended, after an extended move, that sort of a blow off top, so to speak, usually sets up some sort of a range trade. And do you trade that two ways or one ways? Well, because it's a blow off to the top, it would be a one-way trade. So in other words, I would only buy the bottoms here, expecting it to trade back up. I would not sell the tops expecting a trade back down, because there's too much risk it could keep going. So, because eventually that is the direction it's going to go, right? If it had this sort of a play. It doesn't have that. It's just a range trade. It's just a normal range trade, and it could just as easily come back here as to go up there. So at this particular point, you can trade both sides of the range. The problem is the range is narrow. As you can see, almost every day you're doing the whole range. So if you buy it here, you just got to put a real tight stop underneath it, right? Because if it breaks down, you're going to come back down here. If you sell it up here, again, you got to put a real tight stop on the other side. And then, of course, what's the risk there? Well, your probability of stopping out is greater, because remember, and I'm going to go to a different chart now. Remember, we just saw, what was it, 2 days ago, we saw the S&P extend the range, right? And what happened? It went right back into it. So if you were playing that tight stop, because remember the range here was here. If you were playing that tight stop here, what happened? You got stopped out, and look where it is now. That's the risk of small ranges that are not that well defined yet. So, okay. All right, well, that was a bunch of questions. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. So a reminder, after today, tape delayed shows, have to send me your questions before 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Please send them. I love answering them. I think that's the best way for all of you to learn. I'm here to try to teach as well to make you money. But, if you're going to participate, you might as well ask them some questions. Whatever comes to your mind, save it for the next day, jot it down somewhere, shoot it over to me in email. Those places to send will be on the website starting Monday, or Sunday actually. If you pop over to the website, you come in here to TATV, you click on this baby, you're gonna get, what you need to get to, or I don't know exactly how it's going to be set up. Maybe there'll be two of these. One will be YouTube, and one will be description or something. I don't know. But there will be the mechanism here to get everything done. As far as tomorrow, I would think you're going to see more of the same. You're going to see this market just trade sideways and frustrate most people. It's chop market right now, folks. If you're not trading small and fast, there's no sense to be trading. Thanks for joining me. You tell a friend, tell two. I'm LA. This is, and it was, your daily NeoTA wrap. I'll see you Sunday at 10 Eastern Time on YouTube.